Hello, and welcome to the month of Spooky 2021. Scary stories are a part of life. We've been telling them since the dawn of man over campfires, radio broadcasts, television, and these days, social media. They remind us of our own mortality, get our adrenaline going, and send chills through our bodies that, well, we just can't explain. During this month, you can expect the unexpected, hear the unbelievable, and witness stories that will stretch your imagination. Why? Because that is what we do here at Ron's Amazing Stories. So settle in for the spooky and be prepared to be taken away from today.
Another 5-minute mystery.
This 5-minute mystery is being brought to you by an original 5-minute mystery. Now, when I say original, I do mean this one was not and did not exist in the 1940s.
I don't fully understand!
And so you should not.
Okay, Ron, it appears that we are now part of this 5-minute mystery.
It does. And holy brackish water, what is by that pond?
If I had to hazard a guess, I would say it is a body.
What is hazard?
It appears that there are certain words that I am incapable of saying. Hazard is my best attempt.
That'll do, my British friend. That'll do. Shall we investigate the body?
I believe that is why we are here.
Ron and the British guy walk over to the body. What they find is a man, early in life, shot down by a pistol. There are several footprints around the scene. All seem to come up to the body but none leave. Laying next to the corpse is a note. Ron picks it up and reads it.
This is hard to read, but I think I can make it out. John and Roy, please meet at the pond at midnight. I know about the theft of Tara Sangoon. I know one of you took it. I will keep my mouth shut for 30% of the take. Don't be late, or I will go to the police.
Tara Sangoon, I am not familiar.
Any amateur rockhound with a background in ancient Chinese Telpe and Algotism knows of that treasure. It's said to have strange paranormal powers that can transport one to a place where one was not.
Ah, that would explain the tracks leading to the body but none leaving.
That is what we are led to believe. But the answer is much closer to the vest. You, my British friend, are responsible for this murder, and moreover, I can prove it.
Oh my, this should be good.
In just a minute, we'll hear. First, a word from our sponsor.
This is usually where Ron and a British guy banter over the content of the 5-minute mystery. However, since they are fully engaged in this story, it would be difficult for them to do so at this time. Therefore, I will offer my thoughts on this story. Is Ron out of his ever-loving mind? I saw nothing in the story that pointed to the British guy.
And now, back to our story.
Ron, are you crazy? What makes you think I shot this guy?
Oh, you thought you were so smart. You led me to the body pretending not to know what Tara Sangoon was. And then there was your clever crafting of the note.
But you found the note.
Only after you placed it there and created the fake tracks.
But there is one problem with your hypothesis.
And what is that?
I was with you the whole time.
Oh, yeah. Well, then perhaps we should look into who this John and Roy are.
Finally, something that makes sense.
Well, this 5-minute mystery has gone off the rails. Ron probably doesn't even have a background in Chinese Delphi and Logod at some, and I happen to know he is no rock hound. Tune in next time and we may someday have an answer to all of this.
Don't count on it.
We won't.
What's that you say?
Hello and welcome to the podcast. Now, normally I would spend some time telling you all about today's show, but the truth is we have so much stuff that we're in a time crunch. So what do you say we just get to the good stuff? Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories. They have over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, computer, Kindle. Whatever you have, you can listen to Audible on it. So what am I listening to? The Curse of Braeburn Castle, Halloween Murders at a Scottish Keep, by Karen Minuin, narrated by Sam Dewhurst Phillips. This one comes from the Heathcliff Lennox Mysteries, which is a series of books that tells of his adventures and highly creative murder investigations. I really enjoy this series of novels, and this one does not disappoint. Lennox is funny and quirky, the settings are always intriguing, and the characters, well, interesting. Here is a clip from the book that introduces some of those characters.
"Are you absolutely certain he said skeleton?" I asked with a degree of skepticism.
"He did, sir, really he did. And it was in a wall."
Tommy Jenkins had answered the telephone in the hall, while my time had been spent on a visit to the gunsmith in our local village, Ashton Steeple. I would have returned home a great deal earlier, and a great deal drier, if my temperamental Bentley Tourer hadn't broken down on a quiet country lane in the pouring rain. It had taken 45 minutes to fix the damn magneto, and now I was sitting in front of a roaring log fire in my library, with my dog, Mr. Fogg, at my feet, trying to make sense of what Tommy the boot boy had heard from Braeburn Castle. Where was Greggs?
"He said he wasn't allowed to answer the telephone on your order, sir,"
Tommy replied, as he swept thick dark hair from his eyes. Well, that was true. Greggs, my aged butler, wouldn't admit to deafness, and his messages made even less sense than Tommy's.
"I think there was something about a crown, too, but it were a bad line, sir. Sounded like you were calling it from the back of beyond, you did."
Tommy nodded for emphasis. I eyed him from my wing chair, my hands clasped around a hot toddy, sodden clothes steaming gently from the warmth of the fire. I had visited Braeburn Castle. It was indeed in the back of beyond, having been built in the wild days of Scottish marauding, interclan warfare, and bloody revolution. It sat on top of black rocks, surrounded by ancient trees, ringed by a sandy shore in the middle of Loch Lake, and hadn't progressed much since the Middle Ages. "And it was Swift on the telephone?" I asked, between sips of whiskey, lemon, honey, and hot water.
"Aye, that chief inspector as was. He said there'd be a telegram, sir, but I haven't seen one."
"Better go and ask Greggs," I told him.
"Yes, sir."
He grinned broadly, but didn't move. He was a freckle-faced 13-year-old, wearing trousers too short for him, a jacket too large, a collarless grey shirt, and a muddy green jumper, which had been darned more than once.
"Who do you think the skeleton was, sir? I've read about castles. Sometimes they drop people down in dungeons and forget about them. Do you think it was one of them?"
"Tommy, I have not the slightest idea. Go and find Greggs, would you?" I told him again.
"Will do, sir."
He continued.
"But If he was in a wall, they didn't drop him in a hole, did they? Do you think Mr. Swift was looking for him? He was in Scotland Yard, wasn't he? Maybe he missed detecting and wanted to find someone who's been murdered.
I pointed toward the library door, which he'd left open, admitting a cold draught. "Tommy, go." "Now," I ordered. He opened his mouth to say something more, noted my expression, and finally crammed his cap back on his head and dashed out of the room. I let loose a sigh and placed my feet up on the footstool. Tommy's father hadn't survived the war. The Spanish flu had taken his mother, and the lad now lived with his auntie, who was my cook. A clothing allowance came with the job of boot boy, but I knew he was saving for a bicycle, so I turned a blind eye to the ragamuffin hand-me-downs he wore. I regarded the flickering flames reflecting off the leather-bound books lining my small library as I mused the message from the distant highlands. Chief Inspector Swift had been the cause of my visit to Braeburn Castle a few months ago in the height of summer, when he'd married the laird's only child, the lovely Lady Florence Braeburn. They'd met in the spring, when we were all gathered at Bloxford Hall for the wedding of my childhood friend, Lady Caroline Bloxford, and, as it turned out, to investigate a few unpleasant murders. Swift had subsequently exchanged Scotland Yard for the Highlands of Scotland itself, and was now an ex-chief inspector. Not having much else to do, he'd taken to carpentry and masonry, and possibly, as Tommy had speculated, investigating ancient murders. Greggs entered at a dignified pace. He wore his usual butlering togs, black tails, dicky, white tie, waistcoat, and cotton gloves, with which he held a silver tray. He announced in a drone, "A telegram has arrived, sir." Read it out, would you, Greggs, old chap?" Not that I was incapable, but I was stiff with cold and had no desire to move or let go of my hot toddy.
In the Curse of Braeburn Castle, a centuries-old skeleton is discovered in a lonely Scottish keep. It wears a crown and hides a curse. Swift, a detective friend of Major Heathcliff Lennox, now lives at Braeburn Castle, and it was he who uncovered the skeleton. As ghosts are heard, treasure seekers appear, and the murders begin. Lennox must go to Braeburn and solve the mystery as Halloween draws near. If ever there was a time for discovering a new series of entertaining books, Halloween has to be it. I was immediately caught up in this story. In the book, the author brings the mystery, the murders, and the fun, and you can have The Curse of Braeburn Castle today. Here's what Audible has set up for us. They are offering a free audiobook in 30 days to give you the opportunity to check out their service. This includes free access to the Audible Plus catalog, which is updated monthly with new titles. To download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories. Again, that's audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories, and you can get The Curse of Braeburn Castle today. Thank you, Audible. And now, it's time for your scary stories.
These are your stories, sent by you, for you.
My respect for the nursing profession grows every day. What they do and the type of person it takes to become one is, well, amazing. Our first story comes from Bryn Ames, who writes to us from San Francisco. She is now a full-time registered nurse who specializes in hospice care. Thank you for your service, Bryn, and here is her story titled Ghost on the Night Shift. This happened back in 2018. I was a nursing student in my last year on a medical ward for older adults. I'd been practicing with my mentor there for normal day shifts, but on my schedule there was a series of night shifts for me to experience. Earlier during the start of my shift, I noticed that there was one patient who appeared to be heavily sedated. I was not assigned to take care of him, but my mentor was. She explained to me that he was on palliative care, which is why he was heavily sedated. This was something that was beyond my scope of practice as a student. Around 12 a.m., my mentor and I were doing our rounds, and we checked in on him. Unfortunately, we discovered that he had passed away sometime during the night. My mentor called the doctor and proceeded with hospital protocol to bag his body and transfer him to the morgue. This is something the nurses had to do at night. No morgue staff on duty. This was my first experience with a deceased patient, so I was eager to help my mentor and learn what to do in this case. We had a porter come up with a stretcher and body bag. The three of us put him in, and then we were going to transfer him from his bed to the stretcher. The other two were at the head and foot end of the bag, and I was pulling him from the center onto the stretcher. As we finished moving him, for some reason, I turned around, and I'll never forget this. I saw this black mass coming towards me quite fast, and all at once it was in front of my face. Then it quickly disappeared. What was most bizarre from this experience was that I felt a rush of air from the mass hit my face. It was the same feeling as though someone was running past you and they carried the rush of air behind them. No one in the room saw what I saw, and I didn't tell my mentor, but I kept thinking about it as we went down to the morgue together with his body. When we reached the morgue, there were several check-in procedures that had to be completed. Since I was not charged with this patient's care, I was left with nothing to do. So I sat down in a chair and waited. While I was sitting there, I felt a hand on my shoulder. I looked up, and there was the thin outline of a man. It's hard to describe, but he was outlined in light, but there was nothing else there, kind of like a cookie cutter. I felt peaceful and watched as the light slowly faded away. Later, I found out that the man's name was Pastor James Dupree. I don't work at that ward anymore, as I've moved into a different specialty in nursing. This story is near and dear to my heart, as I've always believed in the paranormal, but up until then I had not had an experience. I love this podcast, and it is my request to our community that we keep sharing stories. Bryn Ames, San Francisco, California. Well, Bryn, that is my thought as well. As for your story, I found it very interesting. I've never told anyone this because I can't be sure it actually happened. Your story makes me think that just maybe it did. I was recently in the emergency room as a patient. I was in some real discomfort, and sitting or lying down was not an option. I just paced back and forth in my tiny room. While doing this, I too felt a rush of air strike me. At the time, I thought it must be an air conditioner, but looking around the room, I couldn't find any ducts. I tried to figure out what happened, but came up empty. A few minutes passed, and my nurse entered the room and took me for some tests. They finally figured out how to remove my discomfort, and I was released. Did I experience what you went through? Really hard to say, but that did happen. Our next story is a Halloween head-scratcher. I'm not sure what to make of it, and I think you're going to agree. It comes from Carson City, Nevada, and was sent in by Jimmy Farnsworth, who just happens to be a Halloween specialist. What is that, you might ask? I'll let Jimmy explain that in his story. It happened one Halloween. Hello, Ron. I love your show and just had to tell you a story. It's hard to explain and, well, harder to believe. I'm what you call Halloween addicted, a real expert on the subject. I live it all year around and have taken some flack for it over the years. Each Halloween I go out of my way to have a paranormal experience. Most times, nothing happens, but this past year, well, this happened. My girlfriend, brother, and we'll call him Frank, set out to spend Halloween night in a graveyard. Yes, we actually did that. When we arrived, the first thing we noticed is that we weren't alone. One thing that I should point out at this time is that it is rather illegal to do what we did. So, don't try this at home, folks. The plan was to find a new grave and just hang out. We had all kinds of treats, including some liquid libations that aren't strictly legal if you're underage. We set up, and that is when Frank joined us. We sat and talked for some time and enjoyed the ambience. Eventually, we got cold and decided to call it a night. That is when Frank stood up and disappeared. Not much more I can add except that we were all in shock and had no explanation for what we saw, heard, and felt. The next day, we went back to the graveyard and checked on the spot. The man whose grave we sat at was Frank Michael Richards. He had died 2 days before from COVID. This is a true story. Jimmy Farnsworth, Carson City, Nevada. Wow, what a tale, and I absolutely love how you told it. You sound like the type of guy I want to hang out and spend my Halloween with. Thank you for your story, Jimmy. Well, that's it for this time. If you have a story that you want to share, like Jimmy did, head to the main website at ronsamazingstories.com, click on the story submission banner, leave your story, give it a title, and tell me where you're from. I'll read it if I can. Our featured story comes from a little-known radio series called Beyond Midnight. It was a South African radio horror anthology that ran from 1968 to 1970 on Springbok Radio. This is a strange story, to say the least. At first, it seems to be a simple tale of ghosts haunting a man to the point of near insanity. But there is so much more. Hang out until the end and all will be made clear. The story is titled The Signal Man, and it first aired somewhere in South Africa in the year 1969. Now, this is a complete recording just as it aired, with a lead-in, full commercials, and even a few mistakes. I suggest you close your eyes and let yourself be transported back in time. Please enjoy The Signal Man.
When the signal man heard my voice thus calling to him, he was standing at the door of his box, with a flag in his hand, furled round its short pole. One would have thought he could not have doubted from what quarter the voice came, But instead of looking up to where I stood on the top of the steep cutting over the railway line, he turned himself about and looked down the line. There was something remarkable about the man. The way he stood, something strange, perhaps uncanny. But certainly I would have termed such a thought mere imagination then. I know now what was remarkable about that man, and even though years have passed, I still see his figure, foreshortened and shadowed, down in the deep trench. My figure high above him, so steeped in the glow of an angry sunset that I shaded my eyes with my hand before I saw him at all.
Hello, below! Is there any path by which I may come down and speak with you?
Biotex, the new soak and pre-wash powder, presents Beyond Midnight by Michael McCabe.
Now, ladies, we're speaking about Biotex in a series of programs, and Mrs. E.B. Granger of Gordon Road, Heathfield in the Cape wrote to say that she decided to try our Biotex just to see if it lived up to our claims. And she said, I bought a packet, and lo and behold, it actually did just what the advert said. I'm so proud of the children's white shirts, the hankies, and the underwear that I want to say it will be Biotex for me every washing day from now on. Some of my family's accessories were left with slight stains, but now, thanks to Biotex soaking, they come out white, and the stains do go away, as you say. Now, that is a statement from Mrs. Granger of Heathfield of the Cape, and it bears out what we have been saying to you, ladies, ever since Biotex first came on the market. We said to you, it is different to any washing product that you've ever used before. We claim that the stubbornest stains will vanish, and people like Mrs. Granger bear out our claims. Remember, Biotex.
The man. He stood now with his left hand at his chin, his right hand across his breast. His post was in as solitary and dismal place as ever I saw. There was an earthy, deadly smell, and little sunlight penetrated down to the line and signal box. The gloomy entrance of the black tunnel yawned. I stopped a few feet in front of the man, and suddenly he stepped back and raised his right hand. There was something in the man that daunted me.
This is a lonesome post to occupy. A visitor, I should think, must be a rarity, yes? I looked down from up yonder and felt a need to come down. Signal boxes have always riveted my attention.
He directed a most curious look towards the red light near the tunnel's mouth.
The light is in your charge, is it not?
Don't you know it is?
A monstrous thought came into my mind that this was a spirit, not a man. I stepped back, but then I detected in his eyes some latent fear of me.
You look at me as if you had a dread of me.
I was doubtful whether I'd seen you before.
Where?
There. By the light.
There? My good fellow, what should I do there? Well, however be that as it may, I never was there. You may be sure of that. I've always had a fascination for railways and their workings. If it would not disturb you, may I prevail upon you to show me over your box?
Of course, sir. Come this way, sir, come this way.
Thank you.
Come this way, sir, please. Manual labor I had next to none. I have to trim those lights, turn that iron handle now and then. Many long, dreary hours I have to spend here, so I occupy my time working at fractions and equations, problems, you know.
Is it necessary for you always to remain in this damp air down here? Even in this signal box with a fire aglow, it is somehow oppressive. Can you never rise into the sunshine?
Well, that depends upon times and circumstances.
I see.
Under some conditions, there will be less upon the line than under others. In bright weather, I go up for a change. Certain hours of the day and night, I'm freer than others. But at all times, I'm liable to be called by my electric bell.
Forgive me, but you appear better educated than your station in life calls for. I mean no offense.
When I was younger, I was a student of natural philosophy. I attended lectures, but it all came to nothing. I ran wild and was sent down. I've never risen again. But I've made my bed, sir, and now I must lie on it. It is too late to make another.
Acceptance of things for what they are. There is something to that. You almost make me believe that I have met a contented man.
I used to be. But I'm troubled, sir. I'm troubled.
Oh? With what? What is your trouble?
It is very difficult to impart. Very, very difficult to speak of. If you ever make another visit, I will try to tell you.
But I expressly intend to make you another visit. Say, when shall it be?
I go off early in the morning, and I shall be on guard at 10 tomorrow night.
I'll come at 11.
I'll show you my white light. That is, till you found the way. When you have found it, don't call out. And when you're at the top, don't call out.
Very well.
Let me ask you a parting question. What made you cry, hello, below there, tonight?
Heaven knows. I cried something to that effect.
No, not to that effect, sir. Those were the very words. I know them well.
Well, I spoke thus because I saw you below and wished to attract your attention.
For no other reason.
What other reason could I possibly have?
You had no feeling that they were conveyed to you in any supernatural way?
No.
Oh, good night, sir. Oh, may I inquire your name? Mine is William Benby.
Mine is Charles Dickens.
There was something singularly peculiar about the man. Of this I was sure. And I could hardly wait the time before I could speak with him again. That he was well educated, there was no doubt. That he feared something or someone very greatly, there was no doubt either. There was something tortured about him. While we talked that first night, he was several times interrupted by the little bell and had to read off messages and send replies. Once he had to stand and display a flag as a train passed. Once or twice, while he was speaking, he turned and watched the bell, and his face drained of all color when it did not ring. I was punctual to my appointment the next night.
Good night, sir. My hand.
Good night to you, sir. And here's mine.
I have made up my mind, sir, that you shall not have to ask me twice what troubles me. Oh, please be seated.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I took you for someone else yesterday night. That troubles me.
That mistake?
No. That's someone else.
Who is it?
I don't know.
Like me?
I don't know. I never saw the face. The left arm is across the face, and the left arm is waved, violently waved. This way. For pity's sake, clear the way. One moonlight night, I was sitting here when I heard a voice cry, "Hello, below there! Look out!" I started up, looked from that door, and saw this someone else standing by the red light near the tunnel, waving as I just showed you. The voice seemed hoarse with shouting, and he cried, "Look out! Look out!" And then again, "Hello, below there! Look out!" I caught up my lamp, turned it on red, and ran towards the figure.
Hello! Below there! Look
figure stood in the blackness outside the tunnel. I advanced so close upon it that I wondered at it keeping the sleeve before the eyes. I ran up to it and had my hand stretched out to pull the sleeve away when it was gone.
Into the tunnel?
No. I ran into the tunnel 500 yards. I stopped and held my lamp above my head and saw the figures of the measured distance and saw the wet stains stealing down the walls and trickling through the arch. I ran out again, faster than I had run in, for I had a mortal abhorrence of the place upon me, and I looked all around the red light with my own red light, and I went up the iron ladder atop of it, and then I came down again and ran back here. I telegraphed both ways. An alarm has been given. Is anything wrong? An alarm has been given. Is anything wrong?
All well. All well.
An alarm has been given. Is anything wrong?
All well. All well.
An alarm has been given. Is anything wrong?
This figure must have been a deception of your senses, a deception of your sense of sight. Figures such as you describe sometimes originate in the delicate nerves that minister to the functions of the eye. As to the imaginary voice, well, the wind, dear sir, the wind which sometimes sounds, well, in this unnatural valley, think...
That is all very well. I know about the wind and telegraph wires. I pass many long nights here, alone and watching, but I beg to remark, sir, that I've not finished my story.
I ask your pardon.
Within 6 hours after the appearance, a memorable accident on this line happened, and within 10 hours, the dead and wounded were brought along through the tunnel, over the spot where the figure had stood.
Now, an effective spray-on furniture polish that gives a wax shine instantly. Johnson's Pledge. Just spray on, and your duster becomes a magnet. Picks up every speck of dust in seconds. Pledge dusts, cleans, deep waxes quickly, easily. And new, deeper wax formula Pledge will protect your furniture longer. Buy Johnson's Pledge Aerosol today.
Soak, soak, that's all you have to do. Soak, soak, just for an hour or two you'll find things look as good as new when you use new Biotex.
Amazing new Biotex soaks stubborn stains away.
Clean, clean, everything soon will be clean, clean, for all the world to see. Soak, soak, stains away easily when you use new Biotex.
Get amazing new Biotex today and let soaking do the washing.
Within 10 hours, the dead and wounded were brought along through the tunnel over the spot where the figure had stood. This was just a year ago. 6 or 7 months passed, and I had recovered from the surprise and shock when, one morning, as day was breaking, I, standing at that door, looked towards the red light and saw the spectre again.
Did it cry out?
No, it was silent.
Did it wave its arm?
No. It leaned against the shaft of the light, with both hands before the face like this. Like an action of mourning I've seen in stone figures on tombs.
Did you go up to it?
I came in and sat down, partly to collect my thoughts, partly because it had turned me faint. When I went to the door again, daylight was all around me, and the ghost had gone.
Ghost?
That very day, as the train came out of the tunnel, I noticed at a carriage window on my side a confusion of hands and heads. I saw it just in time to signal the driver, stop. He shut off and put his brakes on, but the train drifted past here, 150 yards or so. beautiful young lady had died instantly in one of the compartments. And she was brought in here to the box and laid there on the floor between us. True, sir. True. Precisely as it happened. So I tell it you. Now, sir, mark this and judge how my mind is troubled. The spectre came back a week ago. Ever since, it has been there now and again by fits and starts.
At the light?
At the danger light.
What does it seem to do?
Like this. For pity's sake, clear the way.
For pity's sake, clear the way. For pity's sake, clear the way.
I have no peace or rest from it. It calls to me.
Below there! Look out! Below there! Look out! For pity's sake, clear the way.
It calls for many minutes together, in an agonized way. It rings my little bell.
I remember. Did it ring your bell yesterday evening when I was here and you went to the door?
Twice.
Oh, I see how your imagination misleads you. My eyes were on the bell, and my ears were open to the bell. And if I'm a living man, it did not ring at those times. No, nor at any other time, except in the course of natural physical things, when it was rung by the station communicating to you.
I have never made a mistake as to that yet, sir. I have never confused the spectre's ring with a man's. The ghost's ring is a strange vibration in the bell that it derives from nothing else. And I've not asserted that the bell stirs to the eye. I don't wonder that you fail to hear it, but I heard it.
And did the spectre seem to be there when you looked out?
It was there.
Both times?
Both times. Will you come to the door and look with me now?
Well. I saw the danger light and the dismal mouth of the tunnel. The high, wet stone walls of the cutting. There were stars in the sky. Do you see it?
No. It is not there.
Agreed.
By this time, sir, you will fully understand that what troubles me greatly is what does the spectre mean?
I do not know.
What is its warning against? What is the danger? Where is the danger? There is danger overhanging somewhere on the line. Some dreadful calamity will happen. It is not to be doubted this third time after what has gone before, but surely this is a cruel haunting of me. What can I do?
At this, the poor man pulled out his handkerchief and wiped the drops from his heated forehead. I could think of nothing to say, nothing to put courage into him.
If I telegraph danger on either side of me, or on both, I can give no reason for it. I should get into trouble and do no good. They would think I was mad. Can you imagine? This is the way it would work. Danger! Take care!
What's danger? Where?
I don't know, but for pity's sake, take care. They would say I'd gone mad and they would displace me. What else could they do?
His pain of mind was most pitiable to see. It was the mental torture of a conscientious man, oppressed beyond endurance by a responsibility involving life.
When it first stood under the danger light, why not tell me how it might be averted? Why not tell me where the accident was to happen, if it had to happen? When, on the second coming, it hit his head, why not tell me instead she's going to die? Tell them to keep her at home. If it came on those two occasions only to show me that its warnings were true, and so to prepare me for the third, why not warn me plainly now? And I, a poor signalman, on this solitary station, why not go to somebody with credit to be believed and power to act?
Bendy, William, you cannot blame yourself for anything. You must not become so agitated. Whoever so thoroughly discharges his duty as you do
must do well. It must needs be comfort to you to know full well that you understand your duty perfectly. The fact remains, I know that you do not understand these confounded appearances, but you must not take on so. I will not insult you by trying to reason you out of your belief.
Thank you, son.
I left him at 2 o'clock that morning. I'd offered to stay the night, but he would not hear of it. As I climbed the path up, I looked down to the red light. I did not like it. I knew full well I should not sleep sound if my bed were under it. Nor did I like the two sequences of the accident and the dead girl. I wondered how I ought to act. I knew the man to be painstaking, vigilant, and although in an inferior position, he held a most important trust. How long, with his mind as it was, would he remain to execute this trust with precision, I wondered. I resolved to accompany him to the wisest medical man in those parts and to take his opinion. Something told me that it would be most treacherous to communicate all that the signalman had told me to his superiors. It might well cost him his living. A change in his time of duty would come round next night, he had informed me. He would be off an hour or two after sunrise and on again soon after sunset. I had appointed to return accordingly. Next evening was a lovely evening, and I walked out early to enjoy it. The sun was not yet quite down when I traversed the field path near the top of the deep cutting. I would extend my walk for an hour, I said to myself, half an hour on and half an hour back, and it would then be time to go to my signalman's box. Before pursuing my stroll, I stepped to the brink and mechanically looked down from the point from which I had first seen him. I cannot describe the thrill that seized upon me when, close at the mouth of the tunnel, I saw the appearance of a man with his left sleeve across his eyes, passionately waving his right arm. The nameless horror that oppressed me quickly passed when, close at the mouth of the tunnel, I saw that this appearance of a man was a man. There was a little group of men standing further away, and this first one seemed to be rehearsing the gesture he made, the gesture the signalman had described so vividly. The danger light was not yet lighted. Against its shaft, a little low hut, entirely new to me, had been made of some wooden supports and tarpaulin. It looked no bigger than a bed. I descended the path with all the speed I could muster.
Hello! Hello, what is the matter? What has happened?
Signalman, killed this morning, sir.
Not the man belonging to that box.
Yes, sir.
Not the man I knew.
You will recognize him, sir, if you knew him.
He raised the tarpaulin covering from the small structure I had observed from above.
His face is quite composed.
How did this happen?
He was cut down by an engine, sir. No man in England knew his work better, but somehow he was not clear of the outer rail. It was just at broad day. He'd struck the light and had the lamp in his hand, and as the engine came out of the tunnel, his back was towards her, and she cut him down. That man drove her and was showing how it happened. Show the gentleman, Tom.
Well, coming round the curve in the tunnel, sir, I saw him at the end, like as if I saw him down a perspective glass. Well, there was no time to check speed, and I knew him to be very careful. But as he didn't seem to take heed of the whistle, I shut it off. And as we were running down upon him, I called to him as loud as I could call.
What did you say?
Say, sir? Why, I said, below there. Look out. For pity's sake, clear the way. never left off calling to him, sir. I put my arm before my eyes so as not to see, and I waved this arm right to the last. But it was no use.
Let's play some music. I feel like dancing.
But I thought you had a splitting headache.
Oh, that was 5 minutes ago. I've taken Grandpa headache powder since.
Grandpa headache powders kill pain, soothe strained nerves and lift depression. Grandpa headache powders are extra effective because they have a triple action. Grandpa headache powders work extra fast because they dissolve almost immediately. Get fast, effective relief from any pain, all pain. Get Grandpa headache powders.
Ah, Grandpa.
Soak, soak, that's all you have to do. Soak, soak, just for an hour or two you'll find things look as good as new when you use new Biotex.
With amazing new Biotex, the stubbornest stains will vanish. Yes, vanish clean away. Just by soaking your laundry overnight in cold water, or for an hour or two in warm water, or by pre-washing it quickly in your washing machine. Get amazing new Biotex today.
Beyond Midnight is presented every Friday night at 9:30 by Biotex, the new soak and pre-wash powder. The program is adapted for broadcasting and produced by Michael McCabe.
Well, did you have it all figured out before the end of The Signal Man was revealed? I had my suspicions, but I thought he was going to be caught up in a terrible train wreck caused by his actions, or inactions. So I was actually taken aback by the fact that he was the only casualty. But I'm left with a question. Who were those people he envisioned? And is he with them now? Who can say? Beyond Midnight started out as a replacement series for SF-68. Michael McCabe served as the producer and adapted stories for both series. Unlike its sci-fi predecessor, Beyond Midnight served up stories with a supernatural bent. The show, as you heard, was sponsored by Biotex and featured the tagline, "Just soak, just soak, just soak" in Biotex. I gotta admit, the commercials in this one were pretty lame. But hey, it was 1969. Are you ready for another Halloween story? This next one is being brought to you by Gladys Goodies, good treats for your dog to eat. They use all natural ingredients with no sugars, preservatives, salts, or harmful ingredients. So no scary stuff here. Check out their online store at GladysGoodies.com. That is GladysGoodies.com. And don't forget to use our promo code RONS to get a 20% discount on all of your purchases. That is RONS. Thank you, Gladys.
As read by. Amazing stories read by amazing people.
This time on As Read By, we have a short story from listener Amelia Allison, who is 11 years old. She lives in Grandview, New York, and sent in this story she simply calls My Friendly Ghost. I wake up each morning to a friendly ghost. His name is not Casper, but he is just as friendly. I first met Tony when we moved into my new home. He had been left behind by the previous owners who had told him he couldn't go with them. For a very long time he was sad about this and tried to scare everyone away who came to look to buy the house. just didn't want any new friends. When Daddy and I came to look at the house, I felt like I wasn't alone from the very start. Dad told me to look around the house to see what I thought and to find a room that I could make my very own. I did just that, and as it turns out, it happened to be the very same room where my friendly ghost also resided. As I entered the room, there was a terrible little scream coming from the closet. I walked up to it, opened the door, only to see a small boy sitting there, looking at me more frightened than I was. I asked, "What's your name?" He told me that his name was Tony, and that he had been left behind by the last people who owned the house. We talked for a very long time, and he asked me if I was going to be moving in. I don't know how I knew, but I told him I was. 2 weeks later, I was unpacking my boxes in my brand new room with my friend Tony. At first, the road was a bit rough because my parents didn't believe that Tony existed. They called him my invisible friend. Tony didn't care for this very much, and over time my parents came to realize that Tony was a real ghost and real friendly. He would move things about the house, hide Daddy's keys, be as helpful as he could, and of course, as playful as he could. In the end, Tony became a family member just as important as Chico, my dog. Amelia Allison, Grandview, New York. What a great story, Amelia, and thank you so much for sending it in. I think you should become a writer one day. You tell such good stories. If you have any more of these, please do send them in. We want to hear them. Thank you, Amelia. Do you have a story like Amelia? Why not send it in yourself? Just head to ronsamazingstories.com and click on the story submission banner. Fill out the form, and you know what? The next thing you'll hear is your story being read, or you'll be reading it yourself. Why not do it today? I know everyone out there has a story. That was the third week of the month of Spooky and episode number 513. My thanks to Bryn Ames and Jimmy Farnsworth for their stories this time. Great stuff, as always. If you want to follow the podcast or the blog, head to ronsamazingstories.com. There you will find any of the links I mentioned and how to contact us. Do you want to help the show? The best thing you can do is to tell your friends all about it, and please leave reviews or feedback wherever you listen. Clicking that follow or like button makes us grow. Thank you for listening, and I hope you come again to find out what are Ron's Amazing Stories.
All of the vintage audio used in the podcast is believed to be in the public domain. Ron's Amazing Stories does not own the rights to any of the old-time radio used here. If you hold the rights to any of the shows played, please contact us immediately at ronsamazingstories.com.